Judge Raymond Zondo released the third volume of the state capture report, which recommends more than 60 individuals for prosecution. Of course, one of the biggest issues of contention has been the pace at which these prosecutions have been or not been taking place. We're joined now by the head of investigations at Open Secret, Michael Marchant. Michael, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. It's a thorny issue, right? Many people, as much as they celebrate these reports and the findings, people still want to see accountability, and without prosecutions, unfortunately, the impression it creates is that there is very little accountability for the capture of the state that we now understand to have happened.
Good evening, Kathy. I think you're absolutely correct. The work of the Zondo Commission has done a great deal, on the one hand to confirm a lot of information that was already in the public domain, but also in many cases to kind of forensically examine the evidence and establish who should be prosecuted for state capture crimes. But unfortunately, as you say, we are still, as a society, deeply reliant on whether the National Prosecuting Authority and the police, and in particular the Hawks, have the energy and the resources and the desire to take these cases forward. And in those cases, I think that those institutions have been sorely lacking. I think the MPA in particular has a lot to answer for the slow pace of a lot of the state capture prosecutions, and the fact that so many of those cases, despite extensive evidence being in the public domain for many years, have not yet come about. And I think that you do raise an important point, which is that public trust in these institutions is at an all-time low, and that I think unless we start to see swift action very soon, they risk alienating the public even more.
There has been a suggestion that given where things are right now and looking at effectively the corruption that has taken place here, that it's harder to prosecute financial crimes than it is any other crime, maybe like murder. But do you think that that is actually the case, or is it just, really a false, is it just not a fair expression of what the challenges in the system might be?
I think that there's an important element of truth to that story, which is that these complex financial crimes do require specialized skills. So if you look at some of the state capture corruption, we're talking about money that is then moved out of the country, often through different jurisdictions, and those are complex matters, and they require skilled accountants and money people, along with the lawyers and the investigators, to be able to piece those cases together. And it's certainly understandable that those larger state capture crimes take a long time to prosecute. But I think what that fails to acknowledge is that those are not the only state capture crimes that need to be prosecuted. There are a range of statutory crimes, and these are things that the Zondo Commission has pointed out in their report. Things like the Public Finance Management Act and other acts that create much narrower, much more straightforward crimes to prosecute. And we haven't been seeing action on those crimes either. There have been one or two instances. You look at some of the prosecutions that are proceeding in the Free State right now, for example, that we're finally starting to see some movement on those types of crimes. But again, if you look across the board of the country, I think that those cases that Open Secrets and others have often called the kind of low-hanging fruit cases, those that are a lot simpler, not the broader racketeering cases, that we haven't seen swift enough action on those that do not require the type of sophisticated financial tracking that some of the broader crimes do.
When looking at the capacity of the courts, the incoming Deputy Chief Justice now, Justice Meyer, spoke about how even when doing their best, the courts of this country simply would not have the capacity to process all of the cases that are coming out of the Zondo Commission reports and its recommendations, and suggested that there should perhaps be special courts that will deal specifically with the findings of this report and process then those cases. What do you make of that solution?
So to be honest, Kathy, I'm a little confused by that as a solution for two reasons. I think that the first reason is that does not appear to be where the fundamental blockage is at the moment. What we see is that the cases are being hamstrung at the stage of the investigation, either because the Hawks and the police are either incapable or unwilling to act on cases, and then that there is evidence that within the MPA the cases are then slowed down. And so the creation of special courts would not fix that problem, right? You've got to fix that initial problem in the investigative and prosecuting capacity before we start speaking about the courts. But then the other issue then is that essentially my understanding, of course, is that those resources would all be coming from the same place. And so it may well be that the courts require greater resources and money, and that would require looking at the budget across the board, because it is very concerning that our law enforcement agencies and the courts have progressively, in real terms, been receiving less money from the budget. That's certainly a problem. But it's not clear that those resources, to me anyway, would be best spent on creating specialized courts. It's often appealing to look at a new system, a new institution, but I think what the primary goal needs to be at the moment is rebuilding the systems that we currently rely upon. And I can't see any reason that the majority of these cases, which should be in the main bread and butter corruption cases and others, cannot go through our normal court system. And that we should be building the court system so that it is able to handle that kind of load.
Michael Marchant, Head of Investigations at Open Secret ZA.